You are listening to the Booktrospective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So with that, let's get into the episode. Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. And this week we are doing The Au Pair Affair by Tessa Bailey. But first, Keely, how's your week been?
My week has been slow. It's been a slow week. I can't tell you how many times I've thought it was a different day. I got Tristan all ready and cute for picture day yesterday. No, picture day was today.
Oh.
But yeah, it's been just, I felt like this week has dragged on so long. What about you?
Nothing like super important. Volleyball's over. We were just talking about that. What is it? Today's October 4th, whenever you listen to this. I think it's very close. I think it is next week, so we're not that far in advance. I got a tattoo. I got my first bookish tattoo. It's a Throne of Glass quote. So, hint, hint, nod, nod. And I'm going to go and make my husband get another tattoo. He does not read. And I said, you're going to get a tattoo that you don't know what it means. And he's like, what? And I said, it's fine. It's nothing bad. I explained it's going to be a Harry Potter tattoo. So I'm so excited for that. What else? Oh, me and Keely went to Book Bash.
Yes, we had a fun time.
Yes, we went to Book Bash in Lexington, Kentucky on Sunday. So it'll be like a little over a week when you guys hear it. And it was like a 3.5 hour drive. So we just went down on Sunday because we learned about it last minute. Would love to go longer. But did you know that was the first time they did that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was their first one. So I was like, oh.
They killed it.
Yeah, it was great. It was at a huge bookstore. When we were there, we were so sad because Kennedy Ryan was there, but only on Friday. So we keep trying to.
We were heartbroken.
I know, but we saw lots of authors. It was just romance, so we got to see 2 panels. I didn't realize like the one panel it was like Laura the Last. Yeah, and she writes I haven't read them, but the like 4 Horsemen or whatever. Yeah. So like Megan Quinn was there. Kate Dramas, I can't remember. It's one of those 2. Rebecca Kinney.
Brittany Cherry, and she said that she loves our names
and
considering putting them in a book. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
I know. And I also talked to Janine O'Reilly, and she told me the same thing about my name. She was like, I would love to use this in a book. I said, please, I'll die. Sierra Simone was there, but the line was too long, and
so long.
I did not care to stand in it that long. Katie Roberts, Sav Miller. Those are like the big ones that I remember. We got our books signed by lots of people. We brought some books. We bought some books. Then we had tacos for lunch.
It was yummy.
Yeah, so it was fun. That was our first outing as a podcast. And I tagged them and I made a video and like I tagged the authors. I didn't tag like Book Bash, and they saw it first and like liked it and like responded. So I was like, that's cool.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, we are doing more of those. We're going to, I always want to call it Scaremania. That's the freaking haunted house here. It's Scaretastic.
Scarelastic.
Close. And that's not far from us, which is amazing. That's in December. And there's one in April. So we'll be doing that for like all of our horror lovers. But yeah, so that's kind of it. Scheduling wise, I don't think we have anything important. Nothing special.
Super notable.
I don't think anything's super notable. So yeah, but as always, I try to throw this in early. If you're not already, please make sure you are following the podcast. So if you're listening now, hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, whatever. Comment. I just realized that I can. So long story short, we used Spotify. We stopped using Spotify because they changed their stuff, and then we went back to Spotify. So I can see Spotify comments again now. Apple, I check irregularly, but they make it difficult. But I can see your comments. So comment, follow us on the socials. So Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Booktrospective. And I guess we kind of talked about it last time. We are working on a Patreon. There's going to be some tiers to that. So super excited to do that. That will come with bonus episodes for some people, and just different types of content. Potentially a Discord. I'm not the biggest Discord like knowledgeable person or user, so that would be different. But yeah, so looking into all that. Also, merchy type things. We're working on that too. So let us know that you're listening so that we feel the love.
Yes.
But okay, let's go ahead and talk about this book. So, do you have the blurb?
I do. A sports rom-com about a burly, surly single dad who falls head over hockey stick for his quirky live-in nanny. Tallulah is smart, vivacious, and studying to be a marine biologist. She's also 26 and broke. So when Burgess, a battle-scarred hockey veteran and newly single dad, offers her a job as his live-in nanny, she jumps at the opportunity to get paid while living in a super fancy neighborhood and being around Lissa, his cool but introverted tween. Her tween charge isn't the only one who could use some help fitting in, though. According to, well, everyone except Burgess, he needs to get back on the dating scene, and adventurous Tallulah is just the girl to show him how. But as boundaries are slowly crossed and Burgess finds himself pulled between his daughter, who wants her parents back together, and his insane chemistry with Tallulah, a huge rift is formed, and Tallulah does the right thing, breaks her own heart, and walks away. Though Tallulah knows it's for the best, he's too jaded with too much baggage. A chance meeting and a new push from his daughter forces him to put everything on the line and fight to prove he learned his lesson well and is worthy of a happily ever after with Tallulah.
So, how would you describe this book in one word?
I would say complicated.
Okay. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I just got, and this was maybe because I haven't read, like, I feel like we haven't read romance in a while. Or I don't know. But, like, I just have that, like, Gilly, like, kicking my feet, like, feeling. Like, I don't know how to describe that. So, if there's a word for that, like, I don't know. It's not cute, because it wasn't, like, cutesy, right. But I don't know what that is, but if you can put that into a word, that's what I'm saying. Because I just enjoyed it. So, yeah, so the Au Pair Affair, we have our main characters are Tallulah and Burgess, a.k.a. Sir Savage. When I tell you, like, I love everything about that. Like, and not even, it's not like she just calls him that, like, he's known as that. I think that's, like, the hottest thing. Like, I love Sir Savage. Anyways, so he is a older hockey player, so like he's suffering with the fact that he's a single dad, he's divorced, he does not know how to connect with his preteen daughter or teen, I can't remember how old she is, and you know, he's getting old for his career, and that's all he's like put his life into. And then Tallulah, they meet like a year, so this is the second in this like series from Tessa Bailey. All of hers are like standalones kind of, but like the first one is the golf one, and I did not read it. So they meet during that book, essentially. And nothing ever comes of that. But, like, he needs a nanny, and so she agrees because Tallulah is a grad student who has a troubled past that makes her, like, very non-trusting of people. But she just basically, like, kind of, like, hops around a lot to, like, different school things or whatever. So she's going to the University of Boston anyways, or Boston University, whichever one is. And that's where he lives. So yeah, it's just, you know, obviously it's a romance, so they're gonna come together, but he's, you know, just struggling with like his older life things. Well, he's not old, he's 37, but like his older life things. And then Tallulah is just like trying to build her life, but also work on her like confidence and her trusting of other people again, and trusting of herself as well. Yeah, so triggers. That song is stuck in my head. Okay, while Keely's looking that up, if no one else has watched Monsters, the Eric and Lyle Menendez brothers thing on Netflix, first of all, you need to watch it. I know Ryan Murphy is Ryan Murphy, but then after you watch it, you have to go on TikTok and watch the edits of the actors. We're not fantasizing the people. We're fantasizing the actors. But never in my adult life or any life did I think that I would be singing Milli Vanilli songs, and they're stuck in my head. So I'm hooked. All of it. Yeah.
Honestly, I am not seen anything pop up for trigger. Really anything pop up for triggers.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, kidnapping, stalking,
Yeah.
like verbal abuse, pretty much. Like there's not a lot. Obviously this is like a Tessa Bailey book. There's some smutty parts to it. But yeah. So if you have not read this book and you would not like to be spoiled, this is your notice to pause and come back later. Otherwise we're going to get started. So we actually open with Tallulah, who is sitting in like a smoothie shop watching a hockey game because her new boss is Sir Savage, aka Burgess Abraham. I think it's Abraham.
I think so.
And he's a hockey player, a professional hockey player. And his tween daughter, so she is 12, needs a au pair or a nanny because we'll find out is she lives with her dad throughout the week and then her mom on the weekends. And so, you know, he's a dad with a daughter, you know, it's just kind of that situation. So this book is taking place in Boston and she is like just moved here recently. One, to be the au pair, but two, she is going to Boston University because she wants to be a marine biologist, which is super cool. But she is regretting her decision because in the video, I mean, this is a hockey novel. They are aggressive, which we love. But he is like breaking somebody's nose in the video. And she is like panicking about like living with a man who is very aggressive. And she's like looking at interviews of him. He's obviously hot, but very aggressive. And now she's like an hour late to her meeting him because she's sitting in a smoothie shop debating if like she wants to live with him. So she decides to quit. She's like, I'm just going to find some like female roommates. And she goes to call him, but he literally walks into the smoothie shop and he doesn't even see her. He goes up, orders as usual. So she calls him and he seems panicked. He answers the phone and like in person, he seems like more safe. Like she feels more trusting of him, but he answers and like turns around and sees her. And they actually met months ago in California at a friend's birthday party, which we'll learn is Wells and Josephine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Wells and Josephine. And she does have a crush on him, but she's like, hey, I can't take the job. So we switch over to Burgess and he's like, why? His like palms are sweating and he's like, she's so pretty. He thought that ever since they met. And he also like loves her humor and she's very like, she connected with his daughter in the first book. And unfortunately, well, for him, she's 11 years younger than him. And so he's like, she's off limits. She's going to work for me. She's way too young, yada, yada, yada. That's so funny to me because Josh is 12 years older than me. He is a grandpa. But whatever. I was very much an adult when me and Josh started dating. So he asked her like, okay, well, why are you going to quit? Like, you're literally right here. And she's like, I don't want to live with you, basically. And he's really having trouble concentrating because she's cute. And she admits, like, I'm nervous about living with a man that I don't know very well. And her phone buzzes and he, like, looks down and sees the video that she was watching. And he's like, oh, God, like, of course. And he's like, are you nervous about me? And he tells her, like, I'm nothing like I am, like, while I'm playing hockey. And he wonders, like, did somebody hurt her? And if so, like, I'm going to break their nose or something worse. And she says, like, I'm just impulsive. And he's like, I don't know if I would call someone who lived in Antarctica to study penguins, like, impulsive. And she admits, like, you know, I've actually been on several excursion-style educational trips, but she feels like she's been hiding herself. And he asks her, like, is there anything I can do to make you stay? She says, no, I'm going to look for another apartment. And he asks, like, do you have money for it? Because she obviously doesn't have a job. And he tells her, like, well, I know a place you can rent. And she's like, can I afford it? Mm-hmm. And he lies because he knows that he's going to pay whatever the difference is that, like, she's not comfortable with. So he tells her, like, you know, I'd do anything to make you feel safe if you live with me, like, give you a lock or whatever. And he calls his friend, is it Sig or Zig? Is it S or Z? Because I feel like I heard Sig with an S. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he calls his friend Sig, who has a sister, well, she's his stepsister to be. So I'm assuming his parents are engaged. And her name's Chloe, and he got her an apartment. So, like, there's a room available. And the rent is actually $5,000 a month. So Tallulah's part would be $2,000, or $2,500, which probably can't afford. So we switch back over to Tallulah. She goes to the apartment and she's like, there's no way I can afford this. Like, it is too nice. And she's like, you know, maybe like the apartment's just like a front for something, or like maybe I'll be sacrificed to pay for the rent. And Chloe like is there. She meets Chloe and everything. And Chloe lets it slip that Sig told her that to like tell Tallulah that the rent was $700, even though that's not how much the rent would be. So Tallulah gives her number and is like, you know, relist this for the full price, like so that you're getting your money's worth. Because she doesn't know, because what we'll find out is that Sig is also paying Chloe's rent. Like, she paid, like, half of the first rent, and then, like, Sig's been paying it. So Tallulah thinks, like, she's, like, shorting Chloe, but Chloe's not paying anything. And Chloe's, like, for lack of a better term, like, a dumb blonde. Like, that's
she's an
airhead. Yeah, like, 10,000%. And, she's like, I'm not going to take advantage of her. But she's like, I also don't want to take advantage of Burgess. But she tells Chloe, like, call me sometime. We can go out, whatever. And she wants to be mad, but she's, like, even more confused as to, like, why would he agree to pay almost $2,000 a month for her to live, like, with somebody else? Like, they're all strangers to him. So he switched back over to Burgess, and he is watching a tutorial of how to French braid his daughter's hair. He is very confused. It is like witchcraft. And he tells his daughter, like, you're going to miss the bus. And he's like, okay, if I just keep watching it over and over again, like, eventually it has to click. And she's like, no, it won't. She was like, you look the same way I did when I explained bra sizes to you. And his daughter's name is Lissa, by the way. And he says, like, no, someone should burn the bra system to the ground. And also, I agree. And, like, all the bras with them. I don't know. But, so he's thinking, like, he's getting older. And, like, he just, like, he's kind of, like, got some aches. He doesn't recover like he used to from practices. And his daughter wants her hair braided because apparently everyone on the volleyball team had their hair braided except for her the last time. And so she was completely left out. And he tries, but, like, he just cannot get it right. And he feels like him and his daughter are, like, more and more distant every day. And he, like, he does a braid, and, like, she just goes in the bathroom and he hears her crying. And, like,
I felt so bad.
I felt so seen, only though because, like, I feel bad for him, but I can remember, like, my dad or, like, my grandpa doing something to my hair, and it was hideous. And, like, I know that they tried their hardest, but, like, I cannot go to school like this. Like, no. So she comes out. She's like, can I just skip school? And the buzzer goes off, and he's like, who would that be? And it's Tallulah. And she looks pissed. So, before, like, anything can happen, though, Lissa comes in, like, and sees Tallulah. So, like, they hug before, like, she can rip into Burgess. So Tallulah fixes her hair, like, gets her all cheered up, and, like, Lissa goes off to school. And when she leaves, like, he notices, like, Tallulah looks very uncomfortable. And he wonders if it's because, like, they're alone now. So he offers, like, do you want to go to the smoothie shop and talk? And he admits, like, I knew that you would hate me if you found out, but he wanted to make sure that she was living somewhere safe. And she admits, like, she is annoyed, but she can't be mad because, she knows that he was doing it for nice reasons, and said it's not his fault. Like, it's not his fault that she's looking for somewhere to live because she agreed to live with him. So they go sit down, and, like, he literally can, like, hear her, like, jeans moving, and he's, like, thinking about undressing her. He's been thinking about that since he met her last year. So, like, yeah, they both like each other. And she told him, like, you're literally, like, a walking contradiction. Is it normal to be, like, so aggressive on the outside but, like, so nice and thoughtful on the inside? And she asked, like, do you feel bad about, like, breaking that guy's nose? And he's like, no. Like, I'm a hockey player. And he says, like, I apologize. I sent him some Sam Adams. And she's like, that is the biggest smack in the face. Like, it's a Boston beer, and I don't know where the guy was from, but, like, okay. And he's like, it was better than saying I'm sorry. Like, they're men. They have, like, their pride or whatever. And he tells her, like, he's a terrible cook, and he was going to go get takeout. And, like, she basically agrees to, like, come for dinner or whatever. And she leaves, and the barista just tells him, like, you got it bad, dude. Like, we can all see it. So we go to Tallulah, and she's thinking about how she could literally only focus on this man's mouth while he was talking. And this is just another reason why she can't take the job, because she cannot be around him like that. But she thinks, like, I've been tricked before, and the monster always hid themselves well. So she approaches, like, his house or whatever, and she can see him, like, looking out the window, and she's just like, this man's hot. And thinks about, like, how since this incident, her senior year in college, she has not allowed herself to have any, like, chemical, physical reactions to a man. But she used to love men, so she's, like, holding herself back. So she goes to the apartment, he answers the door, and he was like, oh, I was going to change, but, like, shit happened. And she says, yeah, I can hear the shit that's happening. He's basically, like, into it with, like, Lissa. And she tells him, like, I'm going to cook or whatever. And he's like, oh, dear God, please, like, come inside right now. So she goes in, and, like, Lissa's having a meltdown. Her braids are down, and she says, like, I looked stupid. I went to school, and, like, nobody had braids today. Like, teenage girl problems. Like, ugh, I don't have patience for it. But anyways. But she's like upset because like her dad's like, they're bullying her. I'm calling the school, like, whatever. And she's like, it's not real bullying. It's, and Tallulah's like, it's just 12-year-old girl stuff. Like, it is bullying, but like, you're only going to make it worse. Like, yeah, if you're a girl or you have daughters, And Burgess says, like, we need to clear the air before we eat dinner because I was raised, like, we're not gonna eat dinner with, like, stuff in the air because you could choke, basically. So he tells his daughter, like, I love you. I just want to protect you. But next time I understand, we can talk about it. And Tallulah says, like, I can see that you really need some help here. And Burgess tells his daughter, like, I want to talk to Tallulah alone. And she, like, looks at her and is like, you're not going to leave, are you? And Tallulah says, we're friends, like, one way or another. Like, I'll be back. Because she still has not agreed to be the nanny yet. So Lissa, like, tells her dad, like, well, take her upstairs to the rooftop garden. She'll love that. And Tallulah says, like, oh, you remember I have a soft spot for gardens. So apparently in the first book, there must have been something. So she's like, I'm being played. Like, what is this? And Burgess is like, oh, you won't like it. Like, there's too many fixtures, too many lights. You can't even see the stars. But he, like, tells her, like, we can go up there and there's generally other people up there, so you won't be alone with me. And Tallulah thinks, like, she is starting to feel more comfortable being alone with him, but they go up there and she loves the garden. And his neighbor is up there when they get there, but he ends up leaving, so they are alone. And he tells her, like, how amazing, like, braiding the hair was, and he couldn't even comprehend it. And he knows, like, I know you're not a therapist, but you really helped smooth everything over today. And he asked her, like, what's holding you back from taking this job? He says, like, I know it's on my business, but I'll make it my business if you want me to. And she says, like, no one hurt me physically, but she starts to tell him, like, about her life. And she's from Turkey, from Istanbul. I've been there. Super cool. But she moved to Florida when she was a kid, and she has a sister. I can't remember if she's older or younger.
I think she's older.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
An older sister? Or she's the older one?
I think she has an older sister.
Okay, yeah. So she has an older sister, and her sister was always, like, really cautious about dating, but she was boy crazy. Like, she was like, flirt with me, whatever. But they had this friend named Brett, and he also became, like, a sometime boyfriend or whatever. But he was really great for her, like, all the time. But then she moved back to Istanbul, and they, like, got distant, obviously. But then one day, like, she was an undergrad, and he transferred to her school. And what she found out was, like, he had been internet stalking her since even before she had left Florida. And later, the police end up finding folders on his computer of pictures of people, like, she's dated and, like, literally everything that she's done. And essentially, he was angry that she never, like, took him serious as, like, a real boyfriend. And so over, like, a Thanksgiving break, her roommate had gone home, and he, like, came up to her in the hall and literally, like, chloroformed her. And she woke up in his closet. He kept her locked in the closet for, like, a few days. And he was, like, muttering to himself. And, like, all she could think is, this man's going to kill me. She was in there for 2 days. And he finally, like, opened the door. And she just swung at him, knocked him out, and ran. And he ended up getting sentenced to 5 years in prison. But he didn't even, like, live that full amount of time because he got attacked by another inmate in the showers. And, like, she's telling him, like, I don't celebrate his death. But obviously, like, it does give her some relief that he's not out there or whatever. And Burgess literally says, like, I want to shake the killer's hand. Like, I'm glad that he didn't. But she feels relieved, kind of, like, telling this story. And she tells him that she had promised her sister Laura that she would not live in fear. But that's essentially what she does. And, like, that's why she goes to all these, like, really remote places. Because she's afraid that will happen to her again. And she has not seen her family in 4 years because she just cannot face them because she did not live up to the promise that was asked of her. And he tells her, you won. You didn't let him make, I don't know what I'm going to say, but you won, basically. And she feels like she really needed to hear that. And so he asked her, like, would you give me a chance to let you know that you're safe with me? And she knows she can't bail out now. So she asked, like, do you have practice tomorrow? What time does your daughter get off the bus? And he asked her, like, if she agreed to the job. And she's like, can you have a lock on my bedroom door by tomorrow? And he's like, was it the garden? And she's like, she thinks to herself, like, no, it was you. But she doesn't say that. And she's like, he's 37, I'm 26. We have to stop all of this, like, romance stuff and just keep it professional. So we switch over to Burgess, and he's at practice, and he's irritated because he's, like, moving slow. He's got this really bad back pain. And, like, some of the younger guys tease him, and they're like, oh, daddy's cranky today. Like, he might turn us around, or he might, what? Oh, so one of them is like, he might turn around and never take us to Disney World. Like, they're just like messing with him. And he says, if I was your dad, I would have abandoned you in the parking lot. And like the two younger, they're like the rookies. They come in, they have these matching sweatshirts that say orgasm donor. And like, he's appalled. And so they like tease him and they're like, we could get you a matching one if you've donated at least one orgasm in the last month. And like, he can't focus because he's like, have I? Like, I haven't had sex in like a year. And he's like thinking about his like last relationship, which is his ex-wife. She's already engaged to somebody else. And he does feel like he's holding back because his relationship with his daughter like isn't solid. So he would hate to introduce somebody new when like that doesn't have a good foundation. So after practice, he's like taking some painkillers, but he can't tell like his, like the sports therapist, whatever. There's a name for them. I can't think of what it is. I don't know what they're called.
Athletic
trainer?
Yeah,
athletic trainer. Yeah, I was like, there's a name for them. He can't tell the trainer because like they'll tell the team, he'll get benched, yada 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 yada. But in like to him, like there is nothing besides hockey. Like that is his entire life. So he like literally like he had been the ultimate like jock in high school, like the typical jock, and he was really good at sports. So like his teachers gave him a pass, but when he got to college, he realized, like I can't just slide and like just be good off of natural talent. I need to take this serious. So he really like did straighten up, and like that's why this is his whole life. And Sig is like also his teammate. He's not just his friend. And he's like, you could at least go to like an outside doctor and just get it checked out. But he's like, no, like I'm not. So they leave the locker room and they steal the sweatshirts. And they're like stealing the sweatshirts. And one of the rookies asks Sig, like, are you bringing your hot stepsister to the game? And he's like, don't ask about her ever. And he's like, we're not related yet. And Sig asks Burgess about Tallulah. And Burgess says like she's moving in or whatever. And he's like, well, Chloe said she was cute. Like, are you into her? And Burgess is like, no, I'm lying. This is like, I listen to this podcast about Vampire Diaries and they always go, me when I lie. I love that. So like they're leaving or whatever and they steal the sweatshirts. And as they're like in the parking lot talking, the rookies come out, like they're like, hey, they stole our sweatshirts. And they just like peel off, like speeding off with these sweatshirts. So we go back to Tallulah and she's like running late for her first class because she had stopped at Burgess's to like drop off her stuff and figure out the schedule between them. And basically, like, this is where we learn, like, he has his daughter through the week because he obviously probably plays weekend games. And so she goes with her mom on the weekends. And she wonders, like, what does his ex-wife look like? And she, of course, Googles her. It's like, who doesn't? Like, of course I'm going to look you up. I need to see. And she's like, it doesn't look like they had a lot of chemistry, like, when they were together. So, like, she sits down at this, like, random table with this guy. And, like, her teacher's like, of course, they're going to have to do a group project because, God, we're not in grad school. And they're still making us do group projects. And they're like, basically, whoever you're sitting at the table with is your partner. So she's sitting at the table with a guy. And she's like, ugh, like, great. I'm going to have to meet with this guy outside of class. And this guy's name is Finn. And another one of her classmates, like, comes up and is like, hey, do you want to go out, like, for drinks tonight? Her name is Letitia. And she's like, I'm going to force myself to say yes because, like, I'm trying to be more confident in myself. But she does invite Chloe as well. We go back to Burgess and he's coming home and he can hear like the horrible music that his daughter plays and he like wants to like tell her to turn it off. But he walks in, he cannot think straight because Tallulah is dressed for her night out and is like bending over the table to help Lissa with homework, and she has like this mini skirt on and these sheer stockings, and like he literally backs out of the apartment slowly to like get himself together, and then like also so she doesn't like realize that he was looking at her, and then like he comes back in like making noise on his way in, so like it's not awkward. And so his daughter's like, oh, Tallulah's going out tonight, and he is getting ready to say something, but he's in pain from his back, but he's like, I'm good, I'm fine, or whatever. And so he just like struggle walks to his room, and he like stops by Tallulah's room kind of on the way and like wonders if she likes like the pillows he got for her and like all this stuff. So he gets to his room and he finally like is like, oh, like I can be in pain now, like in the private of my own room. He tries to take some more medicine, but he doesn't hear Tallulah come in because the music is still on. And so she's like, are you good? And she's like, is there a key to this apartment? Like, how do I get in and out of here or whatever? Since she's going out, and he like looks at her and she looks just so hot in this outfit. And he tells her, he's like, oh, the keys are like hanging up by the door or whatever. They're the ones with the pepper spray. And she says, you bought me pepper spray? And he's like, did I overstep again? I'm so sorry. And she tells him like, I'm working on my social anxiety. I'm going to go out more. And she asks him, like, do you stay at home to, like, avoid the world? And he says yes. And he thinks, like, why he's been doing that. He's, like, thinking to himself. But he doesn't know, like, if staying in the house is, like, actually making him happy. And so she spots the sweatshirt, of course, the orgasm donor. And she goes, does that say orgasm donor? And he forgot about it. He's like, I can explain. And she's like, no, I mean, I get it. I know how orgasms are donated. And he is like so turned on and confused. And he's like this hot and cold because sometimes she's really flirty. And he's like, you don't know how I donate them. And I am weak in the knees, ladies. It's over with. My night's a wrap. And she's like, well, I don't think I'll be finding out. And he's like, your call, Tallulah. And he wonders, like, if he wasn't so much older than her, and, like, he thinks he's, like, a burnout loser, like, would she actually like him? And he's like, no, like, I got the sweatshirt from, like, the rookies or whatever. And he's like, they're so stupid, and they have these stupid matching, like, things. And she says, like, well, I mean, technically, you all match when you play, so, like, does it really matter? And he's like, our uniforms, he's like something like, our uniforms don't say orgasm donor or something like that. And she's like, well, maybe like they should. Like maybe that would be a good marketing tactic or whatever. And he invites her to come to their opener game as she's like updating him on Lissa's homework. And then she leaves for her night out. So Tallulah goes to the bar and she just keeps thinking about like Burgess saying like your call or whatever. And like Finn is there with the rest of her classmates and he's like all up on her. And she keeps telling herself like, okay, this is fine. Like this is how guys flirt. Don't freak out. He's like, do you want to like Uber home together? And she says yes, even though she does not want to. But Chloe comes up and like is saving her and is like, she's trying to like explain to Chloe like why she doesn't want to be around Finn. And she's like, absolutely not. Like no is a full answer. You don't have to tell me why you don't want to be around him. It doesn't matter. You don't want to be around him. And so a guy looks at Chloe and is like, hey, do you want to make out? And she's like, no, I'm a problem. Like, you don't want me. And so he like turns to Tallulah and they've been drinking amaretto sours, which is my drink of choice.
Oh, mine too.
I love amaretto sour.
They're so good.
They taste like Tootsie Pops. That's the taste. There's nothing in them. I love them. They're so good.
I love
me and Josh too. Gosh. God, I know an amaretto sour hates to see me coming. So they're like, her and Chloe are talking about Burgess, and Chloe's like, I mean, he's hot. Or no, Tallulah says he's hot, and Chloe says, yeah, like in a mean daddy way.
And I love that.
I love mean daddy. I love mean daddy. Put it on a shirt, please. And they like feel like something like changes in the air, and Chloe's like, don't look, my problem is here. And it is Sig. He is also very hot, and like coming through the crowd with his like baseball cap on, like that disguises you or whatever. And like he looks pissed, and he goes and grabs Chloe and it's like, time to go. And he's like, I cannot relax when you're out, like because basically she's an airhead. And Chloe says, I am a fully functioning adult. And this guy is like, can I get an autograph? And he's like, no. And she goes, I'll give you my number. And Sig's like, give me the paper. Like he's like, I'll autograph it. So like Chloe doesn't give this man her number. And he like turns to Tallulah. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like, do you want to ride home? She's like, no, I'll get a cab. And so they leave. And of course, Finn pops back up. And she's like kind of annoyed because like, what do you want? And she's like stressed out about it because now she looks around and everyone is gone but Finn, like all the other classmates. And so he's like, you know, you want to get that Uber? And she's like, actually, like my boyfriend's on the way. So Finn looks upset and he's like, oh, I didn't realize you had a boyfriend. And so she calls Burgess. Of course, he immediately answers. And this is like what I finally wrote down. I am so sorry, but Sir Savage is hot with a W. Hot. So switch over to Burgess. He like gets there in 2 seconds. He's like, cause he's like thinking something's wrong, but she's fine. And she's like walking up to him on the sidewalk. She's been drinking. Obviously she's drunk, and she's eyeballing him. And he's like, ooh, I like drunk Tallulah. And he offers to like stand behind her cause like he's got like a lifted Jeep or something. I don't know. And like getting in the car, and she's like, that's very mean daddy of you. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? And he makes her explain the whole mean daddy thing. And she said, like, you know, we decided that you were hot. And he's like, why didn't you ride with Sig? And she's like, I don't know. And she was like, their relationship is weird because again, Sig and Chloe are almost step siblings, but he's very overprotective of her.
Very much so.
This is a Cornsight's dream. But anyways, so she starts to fall out the car as he predicted, and he catches her, and she's like, can I get one more favor? And like Finn is literally making his way. Like, what about this says come over here right now? Nothing about this. Nothing says, come talk to us.
Nothing.
So she's like, Finn's coming or whatever. He sees Finn and he's like, who is that? And she's like, can you just kiss me like as if you're my fake boyfriend? And he pounces on her. He's like,
yes, ma'am.
He's like, I gotta calm down. He's telling himself to calm down. But he like picks her up and like they're in the truck like making out and she like starts saying his name and she's like, wait, we're getting carried away. And he's like, I'll carry you anywhere. I will take you anywhere you want to go. But she says something about drinking. He's like, oh crap, like she is drunk. Like I don't want to take advantage of her. And he admits like, look, I have been into you since last summer. And she's like, it's okay. Like I'm the one who asked you to kiss me. So they get in the car. He apologizes again. And he's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just haven't been with a woman in a long time. And she says like, do you know what small talk is? Because she says like, you don't ease into anything. Like kind of like the kissing. Like you just like are all in. And he's like, did you not like it? And she says, like, no, I just think your ability to make small talk is maybe, like, why you don't like dating. Because you just dive right in. And also, like, Phil, like, I'm just entirely too old for that. I don't care about what your favorite color is. Like, I mean, like, I'll figure that out. But, like, do you want to have kids? Are you interested in getting married? Do you murder people at night? Like, those are the important questions. That's it. So he asked her, like, do you think... Or, like, basically, like, do you think I can't, like, get a woman turned on? And he's like, I only need one hand to drive this car. Immediately, like, Tallulah's stronger than me. Like, that's just it. So he asked, like, why did you say yes to riding with that guy if you didn't want to? And she's like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to, like, be my old self, but I just realized, like, I'm really just not that bold and fearless anymore. And he's like, I think that you are. And she says, like, now that I'm in Boston, I just hope, like, I don't just stay in the house all the time and hide. But I also don't want to, like, lean on Chloe every time I want to do something. So he's like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I want to go skinny dipping and climb under, like, some big sign and watch a baseball game or something, a Red Sox game. And I was like, this is so Twisted Games. Hello, Twisted Games, my favorite Twisted book. And she basically is like... or he said something like, oh, you can come to one of my games. And she's like, I don't really want to see you play because I don't want to see you be good at one more thing. That, like, you're already amazing. Like, I can't handle it. I'll combust. And so she starts talking about their mutual friend, Josephine, who is marrying the golfer from the last book, Wells. And she's like, I wonder if, like, they'll make us godparents. And he's like, they're not even married yet. Like, good God. And so he's like, basically, like, would you like somebody to go along with you, like, while you're doing these adventures, basically? Kind of like a bodyguard. And she's like, I have a better idea. And we switch over to Tallulah. And she's like, this was actually a terrible idea. But, like, after kissing him, I literally could not think of anything else. So in her mind, she's decided that I don't want to date him, but I think, like, he's very traditional. And he would, like, want a woman to be a stay-at-home mom. Sign me up. Okay? Sign me up. And, but, like, she doesn't want to be locked down. She's trying to, like, unlock herself as we speak. But she thinks, like, maybe I can play matchmaker. And so she says, like, I accept this agreement. And he says, you know, it makes me feel better knowing that I can be there to protect you, make sure nothing happens. And she's like, would you be like this with every au pair? And he's like, no, just you. And she tells him, like, well, you know, this is your chance to get back out there because you act like an old man, even though you're only 37. And he's like, I choose to be alone. Like, people are annoying. And she's like, no. We got to get you back out there. She tells him, like, you know, you could be fun again. And he's like, well, I did used to be fun, but I got older. I got responsibilities, as Tommy Pickles would say. And, you know, he's like, but maybe I could be fun for my daughter. And that kind of, like, touches her heart. And she tells him, like, you know, your daughter does love you. And she's like, you didn't see the way she looks at you when you're talking, basically. And she, like, goes to pat his arm, but it is literally a rock. It is a boulder. And she's confused. And she's like, is this the result of that high protein diet? And he says, yes. And then he goes, I'm like this all over. And in the middle of this fondling, they both get FaceTime calls she gets a call from Josephine and Burgess gets a call from Wells. And they're like, why are you guys both together at 2:30 in the morning? Because I think they're like on the West Coast, so it's only like 11 or something where they are. And I'm like, well, why are you calling me at 2:30 in the morning? Okay. And they automatically assume that they're hooking up. But they basically are like, hey, we settled on a wedding venue. And she asked Tallulah to be the maid of honor. And Wells asked him to be the best man. They're getting married in December in Costa Rica. Twisted Games. And she looks at Burgess and she, like, just knows, like, he is a committed, like, old-fashioned type man and I cannot be with him. But she has Saturday classes, so like when they get home, she goes to her room and she locks her door. So we go back to Burgess. He's working out and like he can only think about Tallulah. And it's been 10 days and she's already completely transformed their lives. She's been teaching him like simple meals to make, even though she still cooked, even though she says, I'm not going to cook for you after every meal. And she still does. Helping his daughter like not freak out so much and helping him communicate better with his daughter. And Sig says like, you seem distracted. And Burgess tries to like blow him off. But he goes, I met Tallulah. And he's like the rookies come over and like they're all talking and he stops and actually notices how the rookies look at him like while he's talking to and like kind of sees that admiration. He's like, like maybe she was onto something, like, and he admits to Sig like, I have liked her ever since I met her. And Sig's like, so how long are you gonna wait to lock this down? And Burgess is like, it's complicated. And Sig says, so uncomplicated. And he's like, that's nice from a guy who picks up his future stepsister from a bar at 2:30 in the morning. And Sig's like, that is off topic. We're not talking about that. And so Sig asks him, like, does any of this have to do with your ex-wife? And he's like, look, I'm going to just go ahead and admit it. Like, I never really liked her anyways. And he's like, I feel like you took all the blame in your divorce and it wasn't your fault. But Burgess thinks it is, like, basically, like, he blamed it, like, on the games and, like, being into hockey and all of that stuff. And Sig says, pre-divorce Burgess would have went after Tallulah, and she's literally already living with you. Like, that's half of the battle. So just, like, show up to breakfast shirtless or something. Duh. And Burgess mentions, like, the skinny dipping or whatever from the bucket list. And Sig's like, and she better not invite Chloe. But Sig says, this au pair affair could be fun. So we go back to Tallulah. She is at home with Lissa, and they are practicing Romeo and Juliet for Lissa's school. And Lissa goes, I feel like my parents are Romeo and Juliet and that they're star-crossed lovers and that it was just bad timing. But now my dad's not working as much, and so, like, maybe they can get back together. And she's like, oh, dear God. And so Burgess comes in and, like, they kind of share a look or whatever. But she notices that he rubs his lower back and, like, knows he's in pain. So Lissa says, I want to be in the play. I want to play Juliet. And Tallulah, like, looks at Burgess, like, like, say something, like, encourage her. And he starts to walk off, but then he stops and he's like, you'll be great as Juliet. So she's very proud of him. And she tells him, there's food, even though I'm not cooking anymore. And she feels like she's rewarding him because she can tell, like, he's actually listening to the advice she gives. So she follows him into the kitchen and they joke about, like, her being a nerd. And, like, she knows she shouldn't, but she kind of, like, reaches past him and rubs against him and grabs this olive oil. And she tells him, like, you've been listening. And he's like, what are you doing? And she, like, starts rubbing olive oil on his back. What is going on here? And he literally is like, oh, dear God, like, that feels so good. Like, he's in so much pain. And she's like, I can bring this God to his knees, like, with this back massage. And she asks him, like, how long has it been hurting? And he admits, like, he's not taking care of it. So he takes off his shirt and he's like, please keep doing that. And she's like, this is not, like, just a single dad. This is a God. And, like, how is he not dating? And she's like, okay, I have to find him a woman. Like, I just have to. And he says, I haven't told my coaches because they'll put me on medicine and then I'll never be able to get off the medicine. And she's like, you're not that old. She's like, 35 and up is, like, prime time for men. And it is. Like, what is wrong with you? And so she makes him admit that he also won't go get treated because he doesn't want to be seen as weak. So he tells her, you won't get it because you're not an athlete. And she says, well, I know you need to treat it or it'll get worse. And you do have a life to live after hockey. And he's like, do I? He says, I don't think that I'm a good dad. And she's like, it's a learning process. And I think you're doing a good job. And she says, like, maybe we're not the only ones. She says something like, maybe we're not the only ones that are ready for more. And she tells him, like, about her dad's favorite baseball player, who Burgess knows because they're both from Boston. And she says, like, even when he started having injuries, my dad still loved him because, like, that was still his favorite player. So she's like, you could at least go to a private doctor. And she says, like, what if I promise to massage you every now and then? And he's like, if you promise to do it every night, you have a deal. And she says deal, like, real fast. And then she's like, wait a minute. And so he turns around and she literally cannot breathe because he just looks so good. And he notices and she tries to deflect and asks, like, what his tattoo means. And he asks if she's all right because she's, like, not breathing. And she says yeah. And she goes like, are you going to make that appointment tomorrow? And he's like, as long as you keep doing this every night. And she is so turned on. So he like walks up to her and says, anything for you. And she says, you don't need my massages. And he says, basically says he does. And and then like he brings up her bucket list and he's like, one weekend has already passed. Like we need to be making plans. And she says, me and my bodyguard. And he says yes. And so then he gets like really close to her and she's thinking about how she shouldn't. But then she's like, maybe I should kiss him because that'll give him confidence. And she's like, maybe that's selfish, but whatever. And like he leans in to kiss her, but then Lissa like block her. But Lissa calls out. And so they like jump apart. And Lissa like asks Tallulah to help her with her lines or whatever. And he just turns to her. She's leaving and goes, I love to give, Tallulah. So Burgess does go to the doctor and it's just a muscle strain. And the doctor does caution him though, like, you're not really taking care of your back and like it could get worse. But he's like, I'm not listening. It's just a strain. Like, I'm good. So he texts Tallulah and is like, hey, it's just a strain. And she's like, oh, so you don't need my massages anymore. And he's like, no, that's essential. And he's like, do you want to go on one of your adventures before Lissa gets home? And so he talks to Wells and like tells him his feelings about Tallulah. And Wells is like, okay, like go get her then. And he says, do not let her get you back onto the dating scene because she likes you. And if you get with somebody, like we know that's going to be horrible. And he sees her, like he's waiting for her like at this park or whatever. And she's walking up. He's already in love with this girl. And he wonders like, he's like, if we took this serious, like how long would it take for her to get sick of him like his ex-wife did? So they go to this park and it's like packed. It's like the middle of the day. And she's just like, oh, like, do you like the water or whatever? And he's like, what am I looking at? Like, that's me. Like, yeah, it's grass, it's water, it's blue, cool. And so he asked her, like, why do you want to be in marine biology? And she says, like, growing up, her house was really loud, but she went to the zoo once and she wandered off into the underwater tunnels and it was just so calm and peaceful there. And he tells her, like, he can relate and, like, that's why he likes to be at hockey. Like, it's cold, it's quiet when he's, like, by himself. And then they like try to find other things in common and they're like really struggling. So he's panicking like, oh my God, we have nothing in common. So then she asked him like, are you and the rookies getting along? And he says, yeah, I actually listened to what you said and like it's working or whatever. So then they start finding things they do have in common and they start joking and she shoves him, but he grabs her and like catches her because she was off balance and like almost rolls into this pond, but he kind of like saves her. And she tells him, like, you know, you might actually be good at small talk. And he says, maybe, or maybe that's just with you. And she says, well, you'll never know unless you try with other people. And so she says, so I thought it would be fun to bring you to a singles mixer. Surprise! And he literally goes, like, F my life. Like, that's why all these people are in the park. So over to Tallulah, she had heard about this mixer, like, at school. And she knows, like, it's stupid because she is lusting after him, but she, like, looks around and is, like, trying to introduce him. And they immediately recognize him as Sir Savage. And, like, this guy is like, oh, my God, Sir Savage. And he starts, like, growling at them because angry, grumpy. Somebody, like, offers him a lemonade. And he's like, Arr. And so this girl comes up to him, and Tallulah tries to, like, get free of him. And he's, like, gripping onto her arm. And then, like, these two ladies come up, and they immediately pick up that something's going on between these two. And they're like, how do you guys know each other? And, you know, they're like, she's my au pair. And they're like, that's interesting that you, like, have such a close relationship with your au pair. And so Tallulah starts, like, selling him, like, you know, saying, like, you know, he's having a hard time dating. He's still young. And someone mentions the guy whose nose got broken or whatever. And Burgess says, you know, I actually went ahead and sent him another pack of beer that wasn't from Boston after, like, we talked about it. And he's like, great. Like, that guy probably thinks I'm going soft now or whatever. So they, like, are staring at each other and literally, like, having this very intimate moment because she's like, oh, my God, he listened to me. And everybody is looking at them. And, like, this girl goes, is there something between you guys? And they're like, nope, no. And one of the women is like, has anything ever happened between you guys? And he says, he goes, well, she gives me back massages. And she's like, you're supposed to be making small talk, not talking about me. And she's like, it was innocent. And he's like, well, there was also that time we made out in front of the club. You remember that, right? And she says, he was just helping me out with another guy. And this guy goes, well, I'd be happy to help you out next time. And Burgess just, like, slowly turns and looks at him. And he's like, what do you mean by that, buddy? And the guy's like, I don't know. Why would I say something like that? I'm an idiot. I'm so sorry. This is why I'm single. I'm sorry, Sir Savage. And so this girl goes, that's suspicious. And people are like, okay, well, I'm going to give you my number anyways. Like, I don't care about this, but here's my number. They're like giving him business cards, and they leave or whatever. And he's like, goodbye, everybody, except for the pinstripe guy, because he was like wearing pinstripes, the guy that said something. So they like walk off or whatever, and she can barely breathe at this point. And she's like, you did a good job, but he can tell like something's off. And like the wind's blowing, and he literally just tosses those cards up into the wind. And he's like, let's be clear. The only woman that I'm calling is you. And he grabs her and says, the only man that you'll be calling is me. And he's like, are you like getting more comfortable like with spending like time with us together, basically? And he just tells her like, it's time for skinny dipping, Tallulah. So his daughter is going to be staying at her mom's because it's the weekend, and he's like basically meeting her mom to like pass her off or whatever. And his ex is fishing, like asking like, why can't because basically Lissa's going to this concert this weekend, and she's like, why can't your au pair take her? And like, cause you're her mom. That's why. And he's like, is there something that you want to know? Basically, I think her name's Ashley.
I think
Ashley.
So.
Yeah. And she's like, okay, well, does your au pair live here on the weekends? And he's like, yes, this is her home. And, she just like winks at him, and it was like, okay, like your house or whatever, enjoy your plans, whoever they are. And he thinks like how sometimes Ashley would get insecure like when he was away on the road when they were married. But he can't believe that she would actually be jealous because she's literally already engaged to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And he's invited to the wedding. Like they have a very like cool relationship or whatever. And so like he can't believe that she's jealous. But he looks up and like he sees the blinds moving from Tallulah's room and knows like she was watching. So he goes up there and he's like, you're not wearing a bra. Like she's not wearing a bra when she opens the door. But he, like, does that, like, lean against the door. And he's like, were you staring out the window? And she tries to, like, lie. And she's like, oh, I was just making sure Lissa got in the car or whatever. But she admits, like, I was curious to, like, see what your ex looked like. And he asked her, like, I do want to know, like, how do you feel about the fact that I was married before? And she starts to, like, talk. And he's like, can I come in? And she says yes. And she tells him, like, by the way, Lissa is hoping that you guys get back together. And she admits, like, she would not like it if they got back together and she had to still be, like, around. But he, like, grabs her chin and he's like, is it because you might be out of a job? And he sticks his thumb in her mouth. I'm like, their conversations go from 0 to 50.
Yes.
Like,
so quick.
Your thumb in my mouth? Okay. I said, I am unwell. I'm unwell. I'm joking. And he says, or is there another reason you wouldn't like it? And he tells her to suck on my thumb if the answer is yes. I was like, okay. This is why
I wish y'all could see Dominique's
I was like,
right
this
now.
is why I was kicking my feet and giggling. I was like, oh my God, I love a good romance book. Where have you been? Anyways, okay. And if you think that's a lot, because then this girl over here counteracts by kissing him on the stomach and then starts kissing him through his shorts. I was like, wait a minute. Like, wait a minute. You don't want to live with this man because he breaks noses. And 2 days later, this is occurring. Okay. I mean, I'm down. Whatever. I keep losing my spot. Okay. And basically, like, she tells him, like, as she's like kissing all on him, she's like, I don't know a woman who wouldn't miss this. And he's like, well, he was supposed to be on his way to practice. He's like, I'm about to skip practice. I'm about to skip practice. And so he gets like down to kiss her. But he's like, I don't want to do like a no strings attached with you. He's like, I want to get attached. I want to be obsessed. I want to be Pharaoh. Like, he's like, I want to, yeah. And he's like, I'll knock anybody out who will try to get in between us. And she's like, I'm not sure. Girl, are you crazy? Are you deranged?
This is Mr. Mean Daddy Sir Savage
oh my God. Like, I'm signed, still delivered. Justice of the peace. Like, let's go. And so he's like thinking about like just having sex with her, but he knows like he wants more than that. Like, he's like, I'm too old to play games with you. And she's like, well, I'm not. And he says, well, then for now, we'll just keep going on these trips and you'll get to know me and see if you want to stop playing games. And she says, I won't. And you might be wasting your time with me. And he's like, it'll never be wasted. And she said she has to push back their plans a little bit because she has to meet with her school partner because he's going to be out of town. And he's like, okay. And then she seems off. And he's like, well, what's the problem? And she's like, my partner is that guy from the club. And he says, nope, 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 nope. And she's like, we'll be in public or whatever. But anyway, she's like, I'm pathetic. Like, I can't even do this. And he's like, you're not pathetic. And she's like, why don't you just tell him that he makes you feel weird and to back off? But she's like, I don't feel comfortable. And he's like, okay, what if I come? And she's like, you want to come to my study date? And he's like, hold on. You said you had a meeting and now it's a study date? Like, words matter. Whatever, it's fine. But he's like, in his head, he's like trying to think like how he can convince her before he like loses his control. So we switch over to Tallulah. They're at the smoothie shop, and she says she's meeting with Finn, and all of a sudden Sir Savage walks in, and like her partner doesn't see him, but like everybody else in the shop obviously knows that it's him. So like everyone's like crowding around, and her partner's like, what is going on? But she just keeps distracting him. And he's like, maybe we should split up some of this work and then like meet again one more time. And then he puts his hand on the back of her chair and says like, maybe when we get back, we can meet up again. And she says, okay, like if it's for the assignment. And he's like, or like just for fun. And she says, I have a boyfriend. Or no, she goes, she's thinking like, I want to tell him I have a boyfriend, but then she's like, I don't have to lie to him. I can just tell him I don't want to. But before she can even reply, he says, should I be worried about your big boyfriend? Where's your big scary boyfriend? Off doing big scary boyfriend things. Anyways, and he's like, are you dating that like hockey player that you're also working for? And so she gets pissed off and she's like, that is inappropriate. We're going to talk about schoolwork. And he's like, right, you need to run home to your Neanderthal. And that like just immediately pisses her off. So she slaps his hand off her chair and says, listen, motherfucker. And she says, if you say another word about him, I will snap your designer glasses. And she's like, maybe I do want to go home with him. And she's like, I made it clear I do not want you. And if you're too dense to notice, then I think that makes you the Neanderthal. And she go like just thinking like, how dare him, like, and says, if you ask me out again or you say one more thing, I dare you. I will snap those glasses. And he is like gathering his stuff. He is shook. And she's like, oh, I'll take an apology too before you go. Like, yes. And she wonders if her sister would be proud of her, but like she just wants to be with Burgess. And so like everyone leaves and she just like runs up to him and like he like catches her in his arms. And I'm like, this is a relationship. Like, what is this? And so she tells him what happened. And he just goes, that's my girl. And like everyone's taking pictures of them. So back at Burgess, he like cannot stop looking at her because they go to like, they don't go skinny dipping yet. They're doing like the one where they're under the sign watching or listening to the Red Sox game. He's just like looking at her. She's laying next to him. She's got all this like fun energy. And she asks about where he's from. He's from Syracuse, New York. His mom like worked at the college that he ended up going to. And his dad wasn't really around. But he's like, my dad must have been a big dude because my mom is tiny. And she says, like, what's the craziest thing you ever did? And he's like, I was a rambunctious child. And what he says stresses me out. He says, he broke the ice at two different ends of a pond and then swam under the ice from one end to the other in one breath. I would kill him if he was my child. I would murder him. If you ever think about doing something like that, do not. And so he asked, like, what did Finn say, like, when they were at the smoothie shop? And she's like, I don't want to tell you. And he's like, what? And she's like, he called you a Neanderthal. And he's like, that's it? I thought he said something like about you. He's like, oh, I don't care about him talking about me. So they transition this to the skinny dipping. And he's not going to skinny dip. She's going to, and why of all places, a pond? I was like, there's not a pool, like a public pool somewhere, like a hotel. I don't know. A pond's gross. I don't know. Okay. Anyways. She's a marine biologist, whatever. So she's going to go skinny dipping in this pond. And so she's like taking her clothes off and asking like why he doesn't do it. And she's like, are you worried about shrinkage? And she goes, I've already met him. It's substantial. And I'm like, oh my God. And so she's still trying to convince him that they can have casual sex. And he's like standing firm on his refusal. And he says something to her like, you're important to me and I want to be important to you. He wishes she would just like give in already because he's afraid like some guy from school is gonna like swoop in, steal her heart, and like take her from her. And she is meanwhile wondering like if Burgess could be the one for her. And she tells him like, you're already important to me. And so she is like gonna go skinny dipping. It's freezing, but she like feels so free. And they're like talking about mermaids and like all kinds of stuff or whatever. And she goes, basically, like, what would you do for a peek? And he's like, anything. And she's like, what part do you want to see? And, like, he's like, her boobs, basically. So she, like, is getting out, and she's like, okay, well, you have to close your eyes, because he's holding the towel. So she's like, close your eyes, because you said one part. You don't get to see anything else. So she, like, runs into the towel, and she basically gets in the, in the towel, and she gets in the car, and she, like, flashes him. But basically she makes him agree that he's going to go, to the doctor. She's bringing up the doctor again because she's like, you're still in pain, and like one time was not enough or whatever. And she said, this time I want you to tell the trainer. He's like thinking like, I'm going to need a doctor for like this erection I'm having, like forget my back or whatever. So she's like in the car in this towel, and she is like teasing him or whatever. And he's like, please do not take this towel off. He's like, I will not be able to handle it, like, if you take this towel off. And she does exactly that. So basically, like, they both start, like, masturbating to each other. And yeah. So there's that. They don't actually, like, really touch each other for real. But he does, like, grab her, and he's like, you're mine. And he's like, when you're ready to call me your man, I'll give you whatever you want. Because she really wants to have sex with him, but he's refusing. And he makes her agree to come to his game. So she goes to the game, and it's just her and Lissa. And Lissa is like, seems really weird, and it's freezing. Lissa forgot her sweatshirt in the cab, so she's like, I'll just go buy you another one. They're like $70, which I'm not surprised. Have you ever been to like any sporting events, professional? Everything is high. Everything's at least $50, if not more. So she gives Lissa her coat, so now she's just like freezing. But Burgess like skates on the ice, and like she's like, okay, I'm hot now, like, whew. And he like comes over to them, and he can tell she's cold. And all of a sudden the trainer pops up and is like, Sir Savage sent me to like give you his sweatshirt. And so Lissa turns and is like, is there something going on between like you and my dad? And she's like, no. And Lissa looks relieved, and she's like, because I think he really still likes my mom. He was waiting outside the building for us today. And Chloe shows up, and so they watch the game, and like Sig is like slamming somebody, and Chloe's like, yeah, like she's like real into it or whatever. And so after the game that night, like Tallulah's in her room, and she's just like thinking about him, and like thinking like maybe she should just give in. Meanwhile, Burgess is in his room. And he's, like, wondering, like, what she thinks about himself. But he's, like, looking in the mirror and somehow thinking, like, I just like this old loser. And I'm like, you're insane. And so he starts touching himself. She comes in the room, and she's like, don't you want your massage? And she's only wearing his sweatshirt. And he's like, why are you here, Tallulah? And she's like, can we just call it a massage and see where it goes? And he's like, fine. So she starts massaging him, and he's like, does it look like I need to retire? And she's like, what? You were amazing. And basically, like, she's like, you're being hard on yourself. And so she gets down on the floor and just starts giving him a blowjob. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I'm telling you, everything is like...
It's like whiplash.
Yeah, it's 0 to 100. So afterwards, though, like... She's like, in her head, she was like, this was such an emotional experience. Like, it was not just casual. She, like, tries to run out of the room. So he grabs her, and he's like, did I hurt you? And she says no. And, like, basically, he knows that she needs more from him. She ends up sleeping in his room, but he wakes up, and he knows, like, she's going to be gone or whatever. But he's just, like, super happy. Like, the night went well. He's good. He goes out to, like, the living room, and her and, like, Lissa are out there, like, making breakfast. And Lissa's going to go with her mom because it's a weekend, and he's going to, like, take Lissa down, and she's like, are you going to put a shirt on? Because, like, you're my man now. You need to be wearing clothes. So after Lissa's gone, he comes back up, and he's like, do you want a repeat of last night? And she tells him, like, look, you need to talk to Lissa soon because, like, she keeps talking about this whole Romeo and Juliet thing, and about you getting back with her mom. So that night they are going kind of on a date, and he surprises her. He goes to the aquarium, and like it's closed, so they have it all to themselves. And they see the turtle and the penguins, and she finally agrees that she's gonna be his girl. And so she tells him, like, you're no longer my bodyguard, and like these are officially called dates now. And she agrees to start coming to his games. So they're like in the car, and he literally has to like beg her to please do not touch me until we get out of this vehicle, because he cannot contain himself. So they like get to his apartment, they get out, and they are literally making out on the sidewalk when a car honks at them, and he hears his ex-wife say his name. And they turn, and Lissa's literally bawling in the front seat. And Ashley's like, I'm so sorry. Like, my fiance has a family emergency. I tried to call you. I need to drop her off. I have to go to the hospital. And she just, like, waves at Tallulah and is like, funny way to meet the nanny. And he's like, do not call her the nanny. Like, I love that he stood up for her in this moment. And he tells her, like, you know, she does not owe you an explanation. And then he sees Lissa, and he's like, you know, can we just talk about this later? And Lissa just starts snapping off at Tallulah, saying, you promised you weren't going to steal my dad. He's like, Lissa, apologize. And she's like, no, I hate you. They'll never get back together now. And, you know, Tallulah's like, I didn't lie. Like, this all just kind of happened. But Ashley tells, like, Lissa, like, stop. Like, this is enough. And Ashley, like, just admits, like, you know, this is kind of my fault. I did pry and ask Lissa, like, about your love life. And I must have given her the wrong idea at first. I probably was a little bit jealous, but I don't want to get back together with you either. Like, you know, whatever. So he grabs Tallulah, trying to comfort her. And his daughter just, like, starts crying even more. And Ashley's like, I am so sorry, but I do have to go. Like, I have to get to the hospital. And Tallulah's like, I'm going to go stay at Chloe's. And he's like, absolutely not. You live here. But she calls an Uber. And he's like, I don't even know if we're going to make it. And we literally just started. So she stays at Chloe's. It's the next day. And her her main concern is, like, if Lissa's okay. And she realizes, like, I think I'm in love with him. And she explains everything to Chloe. And Chloe's like, you know, we should call Sig. Sig fixes everything for me. He taught me how to clean. And Tallulah's like, Sig cleans? And Chloe's like, I know. I think about it a lot, too. And she's, like, blushing. And Chloe's like, you know, you should just call Burgess. He's probably, like, worried that you're going to break up with him. And she's like, I don't really have another choice, do I? And all of a sudden, Sig is at the door. And Chloe's like, oh, my God, he has a key. So they, like, just hide under the covers. So Sig comes in with Burgess. And they're like, you do know we can see you, right? But Burgess looks terrible, and, like, they both start apologizing to each other. And so Sig grabs Chloe and, like, is like, hey, let's go. And, like, they leave. So Burgess says, you know, I won't lie. It's going to take a while for Lissa to forgive you. And I blame myself for just, like, not having that conversation with her. But he's like, I want you to come home with me or whatever. And she realizes, like, how much he's asking by, like, asking her to come home. And, like, it's not just, like, being the nanny. Like, he wants a relationship. He wants her to, like, basically co-parent with her. But they just start hooking up on the couch, and he carries her off to the spare room. So they're back on. So Burgess is headed to his next game, but things do not go well. So he gets on the ice and he gets slammed, but this time he hears like a pop in his back and he hits the ice. He cannot stand up, and he knows that Tallulah's watching this, and he just like cannot believe that she's watching this, and that like this is the end of his career. Meanwhile, Tallulah's at home, like they've been together for like a week now, and she sees him get injured. So she's like, I have to go to him. So she gets on the first flight to like, I think it's Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania or something like that. And she's like, I don't even know. Like, I'm not even like, what am I? I'm his girlfriend. Should I even go? And she's like running through the airport, and like all the news and the people are like, oh my God, he's done for. His career's over. And she's like, he's probably thinking the same thing. And she's already decided like that she's gonna like move back. She hasn't moved back in yet. But she's already decided she's going to move back in. And she wants to like encourage him. Like, even if this is the end of his career, there's more to his life. So she gets there. He's getting prepped for surgery. And the trainer's like, he slipped a disc. He's probably going to be out for the season, but might be for good. But he's like, hey, like, he's not himself right now. Just be prepared. So she goes in. He will not look at her. He's like, go back to Boston. And he's like, this is all your fault. You made me see those doctors. You made me get on medicine. And I told you I wouldn't recover. He's like, look at you. You're so tough now. But you just walked away a couple days ago because a 12-year-old made you cry. And she's like, okay. And I think I made the right decision that day. And he's like, well, good for you, gorgeous. Walk away now. Go home. And she says, you know, why? And he says, I hate you seeing me like this. And he says, if you're too young for me, do you think I'm going to have my girlfriend at home, like nursing me back to health? He's like, I'm done with hockey, and we all know it. And he just keeps telling her to leave. And she's like, no, I came here to tell you I loved you. He says, you think you're strong enough. You're not a coward, but you have a Ziploc full of postcards in your purse that says differently. Because when she goes to all these, like, she doesn't talk to her family. So when she goes to all these places, she like would get a postcard, but she never sends them. She never talks to her family. She just like keeps them. And that hurts her. So she like just backs out of the room, and he realizes it, and he says like, I'm sorry. And he tries to get up for her, but it hurts so bad. He's like screaming, and she just leaves the hospital. So Burgess has been avoiding the TV. He doesn't even know what day it is. He's laying in bed. He's just like willing himself to die. Like he won't even call for pain medicine. He won't hit the button for the pain medicine. She has not answered any of his calls, and Sig and Wells come in, and he's like immediately like, what the fuck do you want? Like, why are you here? And Sig says, you're acting like fossilized shit. In there, he's like, it's been a week and you're refusing to go to rehab. Like they've been trying to discharge him to rehab and he will not go. And he says like, what's the point? She left me. I forced her out of my life. And Wells says, she'll forgive you. Like, you know, she'll understand. And he's like, Burgess asks, like, is she staying with Chloe? And Sig says yes. But basically, Chloe told him, like, she's never home. Like, she's gone kayaking. She's been on hot air balloon rides. And Burgess is like, she doesn't need me anymore. And Wells says, you know, I literally fired my future wife from being my golf caddy. And, like, it all worked out. And Sig says, you know, we prepared this intervention and we prepared it in layers. And he's like, come in, Rickies. So.
This is my favorite part. Well, I mean, one of my favorite parts.
Basically, like, and so Burgess like turns to Sig and he's like, I hope you're happy. And Sig says, I'll be happy when you're out of this motorized bed. And the boys say like, oh, I don't like it when mom and dad fight. And Sig calls Chloe and he goes, how's Tallulah doing? And Chloe's like on speakerphone. She's like, she's okay. She's pretty checked out or whatever. And she's like kind of just going through the motions. And Burgess is distraught. Sig goes, what would you do if anybody hurt Tallulah? And he's like, I'd slaughter them. And he's like, okay, well then let that motivate you to get your ass out of this bed. And Chloe's like, you know, we went shopping for swimsuits the other day to go to Costa Rica for the wedding. And Sig's like, you're not going to the wedding. And nobody told Sig, but Chloe plays like, she's a harpist. And so they hired her to play at the wedding. So she's like, I'm playing my harp. She's like, Sig, I should have invited you to come to try on swimsuits with us because you always know what color looked good on me. And he's like, stop, please. Oh my God. And he asked Chloe, like, what happened with the professor? And Chloe's like, oh yeah, like this professor gave Tallulah his number and he's yummy. And she's like, I told her to invite him to the wedding. And Burgess turns to Wells and is like, you gave her a +1. Take it back. And he's like, I'm sorry, like the invitations have already been sent out. And Chloe's like, you know, he's 40, he's a Sagittarius, he loves adventure. And Sir Savage is having a panic attack. Like he cannot handle it. And Sig is like, Chloe, do you have a +1? And she's like, I do. And like the boys, like the Rickies are like elbowing themselves. And then lastly, Lissa comes in and she just starts crying and she's like, I'm so sorry, Dad. Like I messed everything up. I was horrible to Tallulah. And she says, I didn't even get to tell her, like I get to be Juliet in English class. And he says, like, I know, like, he's like, she knows that you love her. And she asks like, well, when is she going to come back? And he says, I'm going to go to rehab. He said, I agree to go to rehab if Wells will take back Tallulah and Chloe's +1s. And he's determined to go to rehab so he can get to that wedding to get his woman. So Tallulah, meanwhile, is in the hot air balloon. She's like reflecting. She's like decided she's ready to call home and face her family. And she brought all of her postcards on the hot air balloon ride. And she just like tosses them into the air. And she does call home. And then we jump ahead 5 weeks. And so she's getting ready for the wedding. And she like is like made up her mind. She's done with Burgess. It's over. And then she sees him in the hotel and he is hot. He is even better than before. She's like, I don't know how, but he looks bigger and stronger and like he looks good. Like he's walking like amazing. And she's standing there with Chloe and Sig and Sig's like, hey, like Burgess. And she's like, what the, like, shut up. And Chloe's like, are you okay? And she's like, no, like I wish I could have showered. Like he looks like a Greek god and I look like trash. And she's like, you know, I want to put on my revenge dress. And Sig is like, what is a revenge dress? And they explain it to him. And Burgess walks over and he tells her, like, you know, you look beautiful. And she just can't speak. And Chloe tells Burgess, like, rehab looks good on you. And he says, yes, but there's still a lot of work to do. And Tallulah can tell, like, he has lots of regret. And she thinks, like, on top of what he did, like, they're just too different. And it's like, she wants to do all this adventure. He doesn't want to. And she says, if you're talking about our relationship, let's just agree to forgive and forget. And he says, I couldn't forget a minute of you if I tried. And she says, well, try harder. But the event planner like shows up and he says, there are lots of outdoor activities for like this weekend wedding. And of course that piques her interest. And she's like, sign me up. And then Burgess goes, me too. And like, they're going to like do zip lining, cliff jumping, all kinds of stuff. And she's like, what about your back? And he's like, oh, like I'm better than before. Like I'm good. And like only they sign up because Sig looks at Chloe and he's like, absolutely not. You're not doing that. And Sig says, it seems like Sir Savage showed up for a fight. And Chloe like looks at Tallulah and she's like, you might need more than one revenge dress. So Burgess is like thinking how like all these like new little things about her just in like the amount of time he hasn't seen her. And they're at the welcome party and she has on her revenge dress, and Wells like comes up and says that he made it so that they were going to be the only two that signed up, because if Chloe or Sig signed up, they were going to just lie to them and tell them the wrong time so that they wouldn't be able to show up on the excursions. But Burgess goes over to her and he's like, can we talk? And she's like, later. And he knows that she's just trying to brush her off. So he goes, okay, your room or mine? And she's like, oh my God, fine. And so he asks her like about the things she's been doing. And she's like, yeah, like I'm really proud of myself. And he apologizes for coming on so strong in the lobby. And she says like, save it. Like, I'm not here for that. I'm here for my best friend's wedding. And she's like, do we have to just keep reopening this wound? And he's like, mine never closed. And she says, I'll save you time. We're not getting back together. We weren't even together 5 minutes before you threw me out. And she says, we should just be friends. Like, this wedding is only 3 days. We can get through it. And he's like, I would give up everything to go back and tell you I loved you too that day. He says, I love you and I hate that I couldn't be strong. I felt weak and I'm sorry. And she says, why now? And he says, I had to fix myself first.
Love that, by the way.
I know. He said, I knew if you were going to run from me, I needed to be able to chase you. And he brings up the professor and she's like, I didn't even use his number. She says, I still think we would be better as friends. And he says, I think you need to be proven wrong. So they're still having this conversation and he just starts kissing her, saying that he loves her. And she's like, I heard you, but she's overwhelmed. She says, I need you, but I don't want to decide what that means. And he asks, like, do you want to have sex? And she says yes. And so they have sex, but like as soon as like she like gets off, he's like, he doesn't like, he denies himself pleasure basically. And he's like, I know that you're just doing this to try to get me out of your system. And he's like, I don't want to get you out of my system. And he just like walks away from her. So it's the next morning. They're like waiting for the zipline instructor. He's waiting for her and the zipline instructor. And she's running late. So he goes to her room and he's like, did she back out? And then he's like, okay, like the shirt thing worked before. So he pulls off his shirt as she's like opening the door. And she says, if room service has beefcake, I don't want it. And she's like, maybe I shouldn't go or whatever. But he looks like past her in her room. And she has his sweatshirt like balled up on the bed. And she says, I know, like, you think what you said to me in the hospital made me more courageous. And, like, it might have been. But she tells him, like, what you did last night, like, not finishing, it just didn't feel right. And he says, well, I can't do that with you when, like, your heart isn't in it. And she's like, today is not a good idea. Like, you're being wonderful, but I've moved on. But the tour guide shows up. And she tells him, like, we're not getting back together. You hurt me. And she's kind of panicking because he normally would, like, try to, like, calm her panic. But she says, like, can we just have today with, like, no expectations? And he agrees. So they go to Zipline, and she's, like, super excited because he's, like, letting her be free. And, like, he's, like, checking his own worry about her because, like, normally he's very overprotective. But then she starts to get to worry about him because she's like, what's the weight limit? And it's like 300 pounds and he's like 270. And no one his size has ever ziplined before. So they like argue, like she wants him to go first. But like, he's like, no, I don't want to go first. And then like loosen it. Like, I want you to go first. So they like flip a coin or whatever, but he ends up going first. And she tells him like, you don't have to do this. But he's like, no, like I want to do it. And he's like, I think if I would have been more interested in life, then I wouldn't have been so scared to lose hockey and ruin things with you. And he says like, you think if I get hurt, it'll be your fault that I'm up here, but it's not. I'm here because I want to be. And he tells her, like, I wish I would have gone skinny dipping with you. And he says, I'm not going to throw away the lessons that you gave me, even if I lose you. And he goes down and he's perfectly fine. And she realized, like, I have not moved on. So the next thing that they're going to do is cliff jump, but they have to like ride from the zip lining on ATVs. And the guy's like, you'll ride with him, she'll ride with me. And he's like, absolutely not. He's like, she's riding with me. And the guy's like, do you know how to drive an ATV? Which is super easy, by the way. He's like, I've driven a snowmobile. Like, I'm sure it's fine. And so they get to like the cliff jump and he's like, I'm going to jump first and like check the depth. And the guy is like, you are the most distrustful person that I have ever met. He's like, I take people here every day to jump. And like, then even like one of the guides jumps off just to show them like that this is perfectly fine. And he asked her like, remind me what you said before skinny dipping. And what she had said was that forever is composed of a bunch of nows, basically.
Which I love that.
Yes, I had to like look at that to be sure. We're like, yeah, that's perfect. And so as she's like waiting, she's like thinking of all the awful things he said to her. But then she realizes that he like also loves her and like she jumps. And as she like comes up, she realizes that she had told him that this bikini really isn't for like excursions, but she didn't realize that there were going to be excursions. So she was like, I might lose my bikini. And that's what happened. Her top comes off. So like there's like a cave. So like they go to this cave and she asks like, what are you thinking about like on the way down? And he says like, I wish that Lissa could see me. And she's like, yeah, she probably wouldn't believe it. And she says, he says that she probably wouldn't believe I did this. And she says, yes, she would. Like, you're her superhero. And he asked her what she was thinking about. And she just like tells him everything. And she says, I don't know if I want to be broken up. And she wants to tell him that she loves him, but she just can't. So she like wraps herself like around him and says like, can I show you? And he says, are you all here with me? And so they like start to have sex and he's like, we can call this a massage if you want. And she's like, no, this is making love. And he's like, how do I make you love me again? So then like afterwards he goes out and finds her top and like they go back. So they have like another dinner and he can tell in her eyes like she's decided that she's moving on. Like she's made up her mind. And she asked like if they can talk, but he's like no, because he's like, I'm not gonna let you tell me this before dinner or whatever. So they go to like practice for the wedding. And Tallulah's thinking like how he seemed very checked out like during the practice, and she's like, this is all my fault because she made him make love to me and like give me all of himself, even though he told her like it would break him if he did it. And Josephine's dad like gives a toast, and there's like a man sitting next to her at the table. He just he keeps talking to her and he's talking about how he was married before and he let the like good one go. And it feels like it was just yesterday, but it wasn't because like his ex-wife is remarried and all this stuff. And he's like, love doesn't come around twice. And she asks, she's like, who hired you? And he's like, what? Like, I'm a wedding guest. And she's like, why do you keep saying things to ruin me? And she tells him like, I broke up with the man that I loved. And he's like, why would you do that? And he realizes that she's talking about Sir Savage. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're the woman from the article. And she's like, what article? So he pulls out the article because he wanted him to sign it. Like she sees like these pictures and there's one of him in rehab. And like there's a picture on the wall in front of him working out in rehab and it's her. And in the article, they ask him like, is it your return to hockey that's motivating you? And he says, yes, but more importantly, it's a woman. And like, she knows then like she's all in. So she follows Burgess because he takes a call outside and he's on the phone with Lissa and he's like, I tried, but like, I don't think I'm going to get her back. Like Lissa's like, basically she's like freaking out and she says, maybe I can tell Lissa I love her. And he's like, do you want to tell her on the phone? And she says, no, I want to tell her in person in Boston. And he says like, you're more than welcome to come over. And she's like, I'm trying to tell you that I want to come back. And he promises to never make her cry again. And she tells him, don't like say that. Like, we're probably going to fight and argue, but our love is bigger than that. And she tells him that she never stopped loving him. So we jump to the epilogue and she's taking her final exam for her like master's program. And Lissa's like made friends with the girls at school. Like everything's going really good. And he has decided that he's going to retire. Sig is going to become the new captain of the team. And he's like waiting for her after this exam. And a guy comes up to him to interview him. It's been like 17 months or ever since the wedding. And the interviewer says, when you talk about her, or he asks him, will he talk about Tallulah? Because he refuses to talk about their relationship. And he says, he's thinking about like how he's going to retire this season. He's planning on taking the girls to Istanbul and he wants to become like a scuba diver or take classes or something like that. And the interviewer says like, you're nicer than I expected. And he like is like, a couple years ago I probably wouldn't be, but she changed me. And he's like, so why haven't you married her yet? And he says that she wanted to wait until school was over. Otherwise she would have been Mrs. Abraham 17 months ago. And the guy says, well, since you're talking relationships, are you willing to comment on Sig's relationship with his stepsister? And he's like, no, that's his story. And then he sees her come out and he's like, he tells the guy, like, turn off your recorder and turn on your camera. And he drops down on one knee. And like the article that comes out says, Sir taken. The end.
I love that one
I
so much.
it.
I have to pull up what I rated it though. I loved it.
I did too.
Loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to read this. This is so good.
I think I gave it a 4.5 stars. I was just like, I don't know, it was refreshing. I love it. I love a grumpy sunshine. I love an age gap. This really, I mean, I guess it's miscommunication. I don't know. I don't love that, but I love the banter.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I love Sir Savage. Hot, 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 hot. Love, 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 love.
Yeah, mine was like 4.5, 5 stars.
Yeah.
Loved it so much.
Love, 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 love. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you can't go wrong. I love Tessa Bailey. Like, I mean, I pretty much like her. She cranks these out. And yeah, it's just like refreshing. It's a romance. You know what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a happy ending. We got some spice. I mean, these two, yeah, 0 to 100 all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The sequel comes out next year, I believe. Or not the sequel.
Say again, Chloe.
Mm-hmm.
What? I guess it's hockey again. So
yeah.
Yeah.
What is it called? Dream Girl Drama. And it's gonna be like a deluxe edition. It's
What does that mean?
like the sprayed edges.
Oh,
Here, I have a picture.
I love a fancy book. Ooh, pretty.
Yeah.
I love sprayed edges. I love
We don't
it.
need that.
Do we have?
Yes. So we'll start with a 1 star. Oh, this is a long one. Okay, no, I'll start with the 5 star. It just says, I need a big boy. Give me a big boy.
Facts. She don't want no puppy. She want a big dog.
The short one. 1 star, they DNF'd at 55% and said, Tessa Bailey somehow managed to put me into a reading slump.
Dang. I hate that.
This other one said 1 star. Tessa Bailey writing style in this book was cringeworthy and felt childish and anticlimactic. The main characters have 0 chemistry, and I found it really hard to connect with either of them. This isn't the first book that I've struggled with when it comes to this author. I really like this book.
No chemistry.
And I think they were so cute and so good together. But who am I?
Okay, so that was The Au Pair Affair by Tessa Bailey, and our next book is Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda.
Yep.
I always want to say Miranda. It's 2 first names. It's a suspenseful thriller.
Yep.
I think that's it. All right. Well, that is all we have. Bye.
Bye.